It's Tuesday, September 27th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris Quinn, and I am joined by your other host, co-host, if you will, Mike Shalal. What's up, Mike?
Not much. How are you doing, Chris?
Ooh, well, he's sounding great.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've been...
It's my radio voice.
You've been picking up that pack-a-day habit, or...
Yeah. I've actually never smoked a cigarette in my entire life. I tried once, but when I was like 26, and I coughed so hard I dropped it. I was also very drunk.
It's a very cool look.
Yeah.
But
nothing cooler than coughing so hard and dropping a cigarette while you can,
it's a cool look.
barely walk straight.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in to Lumpin' Radio, 105.5 WLPN out of Bridgeport, Chicago. Thanks to those guys for having us on. Thanks to you guys for listening to us, whether you are, as I said, tuning in or downloading it from your favorite podcast source, wherever that is. I still use... I just do Apple Podcasts still, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think most people are going elsewhere, but who knows? But anyway, thanks to all of you guys. And if it's your first time listening, we haven't done a little breakdown in, probably like 30 episodes plus. But if it's your first time listening to the show, this is essentially Mike and I sitting around with people whose opinions we respect and admire, and talking about this thing that is we've centered our lives around, which is beer and all aspects of it, whether it's making beer, drinking beer, selling beer, writing about beer, thinking about beer, whatever it is. So yeah, we're also in the Fox room today. We're not in Studio BT. So you might hear a little bit of Mark Knopfler in the background, just a little bit.
No one's complained yet.
No one's complained. It's okay. But if you do, hey, it's a living, breathing bar. So you hear some stuff in the background. That's okay by me. So, What's new with you, Mike? How you been?
Good. I was here Saturday.
Oh, to hear Serge's DJ set.
Serge's DJ set. And then there also happened to be some sort of beer event going on.
Yes.
Bunch of nerds.
A bunch of nerds were here.
Yeah.
Yep. Drinking sour beer.
Cantillons.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great time.
Yeah, thanks. I had a great time as well. Well, I take it back. I was just talking to somebody today about how
terrible of a time you had at your own event. I
was thinking towards the end of the event with a little bit of like melancholy how the event had gone really well, but I and the whole staff had put together this event, but I think in my mind, it was like, oh, this is the Swansea Day I would want to go to. Mm-hmm. And when you're working it, you don't get to really enjoy it. Yeah, you don't get to go to it. So I was like, a little bit of like, but you don't have to cry for me. I'm very happy that we got to hold it.
Yeah, I wasn't.
I meant the people out there listening.
Would you consider having like Maria's maybe staff it for you next year? Their staff, and then you guys can enjoy it?
It's not a bad idea. I don't know.
You just have Ed and Maria run the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have Ed
Maria and Mike running Swansea Day for
the
you.
Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Juan Kim can curmudgeonly make everyone some food.
Lumpin' will be here again.
Yep.
And
forever.
It'll be probably just as Yeah, the same. And then we'll get to enjoy it.
It'll be unfortunately held on the same day as some sort of reggaeton art festival that they're having next door.
Right, exactly. I think it was Level Eater this weekend, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a big deal for them.
Yeah.
But it was a good time. And Serge did have a DJ set.
Rockin' DJ set.
He rocked it, and I'm glad that we had. There were some other people who also took turns, so Serge could enjoy himself. I saw you guys hanging out together. Might have snapped a picture.
Yep. It was on the. People have said they saw me on the internet. Actually, I stopped by an account yesterday, and I saw you on the internet. How was Swansea Day? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I had to look it up.
But then I saw you. You were with Serge.
Yeah, we didn't know he was a real person.
Yeah. Well, you'll never know unless you were there.
Yeah.
And maybe you talked to him, or maybe you saw that it was just a bot running a pre-played set list.
It was Banksy DJing.
And you knew that Serge was just a figment of our imagination.
AI DJ. That worked out well for the rap. AI rapper.
DJ AI. Yeah. There's an AI rapper?
They canceled him. They debuted it. I forget the rapper's name. Serge knows what I'm talking about.
Was it, they canceled?
It was not successful. It came out, and within 2 days they pulled the plug because everyone was
treating it racist,
just roasting it. Yeah, it was. It didn't work well. We'll put that in the comments later for everybody to check out.
Can't have nice things on the internet. Cool.
Yeah, so that was, but it was a good time. How about that? And it was. I'm glad. It's funny. As I get older, I stress out about things much more than I used to, and so last week I would go to bed and tell Margaret, my wife, well, all right, good night. I'll be up at 3 a.m. till 5 a.m. because I'll just wake up out of a sound sleep, freaked out about something I don't know.
Yeah,
so that was fun.
I talked to her for a little bit at the event, and she was like, "You have no idea how much stress there was about the weather that was going to happen this week." And I'm like, I probably have a little bit of idea. I do. I mean, this is a laid back podcast, but I know the guy pretty well.
Yeah, right.
So but the weather was beautiful.
Weather was good.
Good job on that. You nailed it.
Nice breeze too. I mean, there were some people that I heard were passing gas, and just to kind of have a cross breeze.
Yes,
nice.
Very very GABF of them.
Yep. So, but it was fun. It was fun. It was nice to have Swansea back in Chicago, and it was nice to have it as a kind of a picnicky, festy thing.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Hey, that's why I did it that way. If I wanted to just put the beer on draft, I would have and made a lot more money. But that's no fun. My memories.
Money is no fun, as I can attest to. All the
and
fun.
Chris, you did the ticket purchase old school, right? You made people stand in a
line.
physical line, outside your place.
Yep, we got some hate for that too, but it's okay.
How many people were there when you opened up the door at 10 a.m.?
A lot. Yeah, there were a lot of people. I didn't count them, but it's so much so that we had to walk and do a count and see how many there was. So I think the first people got there very early, 6 in the morning or earlier.
My friend Ari, who helps me brew everything and bottle everything, and his girlfriend got there at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was just there the day before. I might have been able to pull some strings and got bought you tickets. And he's just she wanted to do this. I was okay, cool.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we did it
in the 90s.
Yeah, that's we did it that way partially because we were going to do it half and half or partial. No, I don't know if it would have literally been half, but some online and some in person. And then we didn't know how many. Then I see that line, and if someone's been waiting that long, what are you going to cut off the
right so that you can sell them online?
Right.
To someone in Michigan, no less.
Right. But we did get people complaining, and I mean, hey, there were a lot of people who wanted to go in Chicago, and we're from Chicago, and I mean, it's in Chicago. If you're coming from Minnesota, I guess petition, start buying more product in your local market, and they will get a Swansea Day.
You're blaming the customer, as always.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Max about this, or J Max about this, and I remember someone complaining. They're like, "Oh, now I have to buy a plane ticket to fly there and wait in line to buy a ticket, and then I have to fly back." It's like, well, you're buying a plane ticket. Just buy a plane ticket to somewhere that's selling them online.
That's exactly what I said,
like, I obviously love this place.
Just go
but go to
somewhere
like Garden
else.
Path or go to somewhere you haven't been before, like, and enjoy the time. Don't just get mad at someone for, all of a sudden you open one of the best beer bars in the world and then you host one. You do it your way then.
And you can charge what you want.
Right. You can do whatever you want then, but.
Yep. Yeah, it was funny. People were saying, can't it just be you open the doors and everyone's invited and it's just on draft? That's the way I like it. And I was like, there's a lot of places doing it like that. Just go to that place.
That's the same person or a similar oeuvre who goes to that event and then doesn't get a pour of the Swansea and is like, this was such a terrible, terribly organized event. I didn't get exactly the thing I wanted.
Yeah. So
half a bottle cap.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's Darren.
Yeah. No, it was from the get-go. I think before I even knew exactly how I wanted to do it, I think I said when we were all sitting down here, all the folks who work here, and I said, I'm okay with it being very hard to get a ticket, but once you have a ticket, I want kind of all concerns to just be to go away. Like, you don't have to rush to get to the Cantillon. You don't have to rush to get to the Swansea. There's guaranteed pours. Take your time. And I hope that was the vibe that kind of came across. Like, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I waited an hour to get my Swans pour, and I was like, oh, it's still pouring.
I think
Great.
I think it took people a second to actually figure out that was the vibe too. Because like I remember the Cantillon line, people were very concerned that they wouldn't get all the Cantillon they wanted, and then it was like, oh, well, there's still stuff left in the keg after everyone got it already. So
Yeah, we portioned it out.
Kind of chilled out, and
I was also nervous about that. I was like doing like ounce counting and stuff like that.
I was pouring it for a while, and I had to measure it against a water glass.
Yeah, it's true. We did before you were allowed to pour. We told you how much it is. This ticket gets this size pour.
Yeah, I followed that precisely, exactly every time.
Well, you got to be close. But
I did actually follow the rules.
I had a 10% margin of error. So I mean, we kind of worked into that. But
yeah, good thing you didn't tell me. Could have ruined your whole day. Made your nightmares come true.
But hopefully, folks had.
I didn't get my pour of magic.
Right. I didn't get any of the magic.
Down.
That's the one I didn't get to try. But
because I was pouring heavy.
Right. The Swansea was good. That was a pepper.
It was
pepper lambic.
Should we introduce some guests before
I was going to say we should do that. Why don't you take the lead on that one, Mr. Shillau?
I guess we go. I don't know what the seniority is on this one. We got two.
It's a coin toss.
Two regulars. I think we're going to go with the sultriest voice. So Calvin.
Hey, don't mean that.
Calvin. What's your middle name again?
Cornbrot.
Cornbrot. I forgot about that. Frederickson from Spiteful.
Hey,
how you doing, bud?
I'm glad to be back. It's took a sabbatical from the pod, and 2 years later, back on the show.
Here we are.
I called a sabbatical, but I'm pretty sure you canceled me from the show, I think.
Well, the show also wasn't recorded for about a year.
That's true.
So that doesn't count. So you only haven't been on for a year.
And it's a block from my house now, at least.
Nice.
So it's here permanently at the Beer Temple.
Yeah.
That is so sick, and has been now for months.
Yeah, we're going to go back to Bridgeport every once in a while.
Since we stopped inviting you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm back. See you guys in 2 years.
You were at Swansea Day.
I was there. Oh, man. That was my first once. I think as we talked a little bit about my first once.
Yeah. Really?
And yeah, I'd heard all about it. In fact, I felt in years prior, I hadn't even been able to get a ticket. And
because you had to line up for them.
I thought you had been to the ones at Westlake.
I felt like I lived vicariously through it, but had excuses that, a couple times out of town. But there was 1 or 2 times where I wanted to go and couldn't get a ticket, and had a sense of like, oh man, I'm not quite in the club yet. And so it goes. 1 year I'll go, and it was like a bucket list item to go, and like the fact that it wasn't like pulling teeth to get a ticket and showing up. I showed up like an hour late, and I only missed 1 beer, and all my friends were there, and a bunch of people who I'd never met were there. And the tenor of the event was just relaxed, normal people enjoying beer and carrying on and having a wonderful time.
And you put on your Sunday best for the event. Yeah,
well, I sent my friend, my Friar Cal was there.
So full Friar frock.
Friar frock, yep.
Whoever had come in your place also had an interesting hair like balding pattern.
Monkish.
Yeah,
Yeah, his barber did him dirty, but he had like a big.
chopped him up.
Yeah, he took a planet out of the back of his head, and so he had hair all around the front, just a bit of ring in the back. He told me he had a great time. I misspoke earlier when I said I wasn't even there. I
Right,
felt like I was there. He had
what I thought.
a GoPro on the whole time, but
And he also had I think he got it on Etsy, some sort of bespoke lambic.
he
Basket.
it was a Sotheby's auction.
Sotheby's auction.
Yeah, and
From Nate Nelson.
yeah, it was
Probably something Nate Nelson owned.
undisclosed some, but obviously a one of one piece. It was a lambic freight carrier, so he didn't want Fry Kyle didn't want a lambic basket. He wanted a lambic freight carrier. So some of the artwork on the sides of the box is in the style of FedEx and DHL and Amazon. So pretty clever little box. But the reports I got back were the pepper lambic, to touch on Zwans, the beer itself, was crazy. In fact, it was a favorite of my friend Linnell and Kent, our regulars here. It was her favorite beer of the day. And she's not necessarily like a sour lambic funky person, but she tried as much of that as she could get. I'll put it that way.
It was really, I really liked, it was my favorite Zwans that I think I've ever had, legitimately. It was really cool. It was really interesting. My favorite of the day, I mean, I told you this, Mike, while the event was going on.
Will be.
Yes, will be. I said I'm very predictable in my favorites because I was going.
It was Trumer Pills and the Fatheads you brought for yourself.
Basically, it would have been if those two had been there, but it was essentially the cask of Scratch lager,
Yeah.
then Beechwood.
If they do bring it back and let you have it again, can we instead of pouring Zwanze at 2:00, can we pour a keg of Fatheads?
Yeah.
I'll drive to Ohio to get it. If you get everyone to line up
And get a ticket.
Everyone's like the secret ingredient in the Zwans this year is Centennial
Hunter
hops.
IPA.
Yeah. So many. Yeah.
We would never get it again. That was for sure.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
I wouldn't put it past Cantillon to do a dry hopped Zwans in future years.
That's true.
I mean, Magic Lambic resembles something more akin to what American wild ale producers are doing by heavily adjuncting with vanilla a raspberry cherry tart beer.
Do you think they were inspired by 450 North, or was 450 North inspired by them?
Yeah. Do you think the ABV's off too? What do you think Magic Lambic was, like 14.5%?
That's
Smooch,
true.
yeah. It's 1.2% out.
What if they do smoothie lambic next year?
The bottles are all blowing up.
Yeah.
The keg blows up on its way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
Container kegs,
Yes.
you can't trust them. That's why I won't carry your kegs in my house.
That's true.
It's known to explode or overcarbonate at the very least.
Well, that's not the keg's fault most of the time. It's very much my fault. Anyway, next subject. Carl.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Carl.
What's up, Carl? How are you?
Carl
Pleasure to
Klockars,
see you.
guy
It's
who's
been a
drinking
zillion
beer.
years.
Yeah.
I don't think it's definitely pre-pandemic for me too. So probably like 2019. So
I think
roughly 4 years later, here we are.
I think the last time I saw you was on the street in Andersonville.
Yeah, we were just walking
2 blocks from
down
my
Argyle. I remember
girlfriend's apartment at the time. Yeah. That was fun.
And now I don't live in Chicago anymore.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
You
where
saw
are
me
you now?
once and you ran away.
With your girlfriend was.
God, Mike's in the neighborhood. I gotta go.
Yeah, I guess neighborhood's going to the dogs.
Yeah, so like after 15, 16 years of living in Chicago, 2020 just sort of blew up everything, and we said let's go to Northern Michigan, and so we did, and here I am.
Oh, you're in Northern Michigan. Wow, so you're way up there.
Yeah. I live in Traverse City now.
Oh, okay.
So either it's like a 35-minute flight from Chicago or a 5-hour drive straight north.
I know which I would choose of those.
It's
two.
closer than you think.
The drive, actually.
With that sweet whip, why wouldn't you? How close, Carl, is that to the, is there a Bell's subsidiary brewery called like...
Are you thinking of Upper Hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the UP. That's up in Escanaba.
Okay, that's much farther.
Wait, what?
That's
I've never
that's
heard
actually
of this.
probably closer to you than it is to me.
No kidding.
What is this?
Carl, you might know more about it than me.
I I'm trying to remember when exactly it was, but Bell's opened up a brewery in the Upper Peninsula called Upper Hand. It's Escanaba. It's all over the state here, and I think some of it makes its way down near you guys. And I think it was just kind of like Larry Bell saying, "I'd like to have a brewery in the UP. Let's make that happen."
Good.
And the beer's good. I don't have anything bad to say about it. They make a really nice pale ale, which is really hard to find around up here. But yeah, it's
Wait, but it's not Bell's branded. It's called Upper Hand.
It's called Upper Hand. Yeah,
And it's not like by Bell's. It's just weird.
No, it's like, do you remember when Bell's pulled out and then all of a sudden there were beers from like the Kalamazoo Brewing Company in Chicago? It's sort of like that, but it's kind of like neighbors to that.
Was that part of the acquisition recently, or is that like him being like,
No. This
is
pre-acquisition. This is years before the
5 years
acquisition.
ago,
This goes
maybe.
way back. Yeah,
But it doesn't go along with the
But it
acquisition.
didn't get bought with Bell's.
I don't think so.
that is a great question. I've never seen anything to indicate that it went along with the sale.
It's very sneaky, Larry.
You're gonna start making
master plan.
Three-hearted.
So yeah, I'm up here in the realm of what's the breweries you've probably heard of around here. Everyone's talking about Farm Club. That's been getting a lot of national press. A lot of people know about Farm Club. They're great. I love that place.
Nice.
But yeah, I tonight I am here serving as a representative of all things Mitten.
Okay.
So yeah, whatever you guys need, you just let me know.
While you're drinking a Wisconsin beer, which one is that, Carl?
I actually left the state for the first time in like 9 months a couple weeks ago to drive all
That's
the way
very
around to
Michigan
get to-
of you.
Oh, you were in
Yeah.
you were at Jan 6? Dude, come on, man.
That was a year and 9 months ago. You're close. No,
You're at the memorial, the second one. You tried to get the second one going.
I don't think I could do the around from Michigan back up. If I'm driving that far, I need it to be drastically different climate or topography.
Oh, you're saying to go to Wisconsin?
Yeah, from northern Michigan.
Yeah,
I
no
would.
way.
I'd maybe a boat if there's some sort of a car ferry.
You'd
I would
ford
do
the
that.
river,
is.
like Oregon Trail.
That's what I would do.
There's a couple ferries. They're ridiculously expensive and they save you no time, but you don't have to drive. But yeah, I grabbed a ton of New Glarus and stopped at a Woodman's, which is, still like a Wisconsin mecca for me. I love that place. And grabbed some Staghorn, grabbed a bunch of 12ers of Moon Man, and a few 4-packs of the dovetails with like the highest what's the word I'm looking for? I burned a lot of gas getting those dovetails from Wisconsin all the way around back up to Michigan because I knew I wasn't going to get a chance to stop in Illinois. We were just hauling ass home, so I had to grab those too.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, it's nice to have both you guys back after such a long hiatus.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we're a package deal, so we'll coordinate this for the next one.
Yeah. Cal's a block away. I am in a different time zone.
So we kind of messed up a little bit. We didn't talk about the as we were introducing people about the beers that they've had
we're
lately,
rusty.
or beers that they're looking forward to having. But we can start that now. I'll go first because Cal actually brought a beer that I am a big fan of, which is Spite Light, which I've been bugging Spiteful to just to allow me to buy and sell, and up until now they've said no. We'll see if that changes, but
It's shocking this is holding up so well. It says it was packaged at $148 today.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
guys.
So I can't. It's still good.
We're trying to get as fresh as Pipeworks, but it's in Mars, but it's a high bar to clear. It's tasting potable.
It is very potable.
yes. So I'm excited to have that. It's I've only had it I think like on 3. I've had much of it on 3 different occasions, and I've always liked it.
Yeah.
And the first 2 times I had it, it was one of those like, what is this? What am I drinking? And they're like Spite Light. And then the next time was months later. The first time was at a growler. The second time was at the
The pub.
A growler.
pub. And yes,
So it was like 2012,
yes, yes. No, I was at someone's house and they had a growler.
or it was the one stubborn growler that you filled after they changed the laws here.
Exactly. But anyway, then someone got me a beer, and I was like, "Oh, this is good. What's this?" And they're like, "Spite Light." I was like, "Oh yeah, Spite Light. That's good beer."
That's awesome.
Yes. So thank you for bringing that, Cal.
really
I appreciate
delicious.
it.
There might be some of this at the Beer Temple very soon.
I hope so. I'd
Yeah.
be excited for that.
Got to talk to Steven tomorrow and taste it through with the rest of the crew, and
Cool.
we'd love to have it tapped here.
Nice. Sweet. All right. I wouldn't complain about that.
Nor would I.
Yeah. I it's almost as if I'd petitioned for that. See if it happens.
You may have texted a few people at Spiteful.
Yeah.
Maybe even like
Cornered a few people.
when we were on where we were somewhere
Green
together, and then we stopped at Green Lady.
Lady party.
Yeah, they're like, where were we before that?
Here. I
Here. Oh yeah, that makes sense.
think. Yeah. You were here.
Of course.
Where else?
Where else could you be?
So what are you looking forward to trying? The Spite Light? Anything else in the mix that's on the horizon?
Looking forward to trying.
Fatheads.
Yes, I always look forward to the next time I try Fatheads. I don't know what I'm looking forward to trying. You know what? I saw Autumnal Fire from Capitol had come into the shop.
I haven't
had
heard that name in a long time.
little while, but I used to love that beer, and I'm a little bit nervous that it won't live up to how much I loved that beer in the past, but I decided I will try it because that beer was so good in my mind.
What style?
It is a Doppelbock, I believe. Yeah. But it's
Heck yeah.
There's this beer called Eternal Flame that they do that has something, and it's somehow related to it or has a little bit of it. So it's like a Doppelbock that might have a little bit of like a Solera element to it or partial. So something's going on. But yeah, when I was starting to really get into craft beer, that was one of the first beers that I had that completely floored me by how good it was. So curious to see if it's any good anymore.
Very cool.
Yeah. How about you, Cal?
I picked up Outside Voice, Hopewell Session IPA. I really dig that beer. It's like 4.5%. Went to the pub or their tap room and had that. I had one of their 7 Italian Pilsners, I think.
They're called Lupo Lagers, dude. Show a little respect.
Okay, Lupo was on. I only had 1 or 2. All the beers are great. I was kicking it with Jake recently, but great beer. I really like Outside Voice, kind of in the same vein as Spite Light, just hoppy, refreshing, dry. It's pretty much what Jillian, my wife, and I want at home these days. Something that you can have a couple of and doesn't really go to your head. In terms of beers I was looking forward to, I've been thinking about Zwan's Day for months. And just like, okay, what else are they going to have? And when we tried St. Lamnevis,
Yeah.
it was heavenly. Carl, you missed out. It was so good.
Yeah, I did.
I'm sure you've had St. Lam before, but what a special beer. Just like amazing grape flavor, not too acidic. I mean, I've been thinking about that for a while, and that it was poured there really made my month.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
How about you, Mike?
I was gonna just say the Zwans. The Zwans was awesome.
Yep.
Like that peppercorn character was amazingly unique and well integrated. It was super floral, almost like Szechuan-y in its like aromatics, not just like a black peppercorn, but it was really cool. And in the context of like a sour beer, it worked incredibly well. But I feel like we already talked about that one. So
Have you brewed with peppercorn before? You did a Pipeworks beer with peppercorn.
yeah, they did. Most of those saisons they did before I even worked there, to be honest.
Okay. Well, you can still take the blame for him.
I will
Credit,
not.
take your pick.
I will not. Neither one. Actually, like the beer I drank the first time I not met those guys, but went in there to like talk to them about like just to see what was going on. I drank one of the Szechuan peppercorn saisons, and then I had a day off and went in there and just see what they were doing, and yeah, the rest is history. But I had something that wasn't beer that was really cool. I had Communion Wine, is like a local, like kind of underground wine making outfit. It's this guy, my friend Peter and his friend. And Peter is a distiller in town, and they just kind of do this side project where they make small batches of natural wines. And they were at the Middlebrow Block Party a couple weeks ago and had some incredible wines. One that was like conditioned on the lees from a Perry. And then another I think it was a Pinot Noir Paquette that was just, they were like great. And usually when you're like, oh, making wine, you're like, you're making vinegar, but theirs were great. Theirs were awesome.
That's cool.
So I don't think you can actually buy them or anything legally.
Cool story, bro.
But that was something I had recently that was like, wow, this is totally different than anything I normally drink. And I drink wine. Theirs was just like great and interesting and cool and vibrant. And well done.
Is it part of like a club thing once a month, or just know a guy?
I think you just gotta like DM them on Instagram or something and harass them.
It's like the eat free pizza thing used to be.
Right.
Just gotta like
and now
show up.
Now it's eat paid for pizza.
Eat paid for pizza and then get some ice cream and chicken while you're there.
Yeah.
Finally, last but not least, Carl. I mean, you got your Staghorn, I see.
Yeah, I've been stretching out my Staghorn for a while now, but I've been on Oktoberfest for about 6 weeks, wasting no time. As soon as the Andrew showed up here, I went into there's a great bar up here called Seven Monks.
Yes,
they have a wonderful tap list.
I've heard of it.
They have it's really great. They don't, tourism is huge up here, and they don't really like dumb anything down for all the people that come up north that just want to hang out at the beach. They have a handle at PBR, and that's kind of it. Everything else is really like fun and interesting and challenging. So I went in there over the weekend, and I was like, I'm going to have a pumpkin beer. And I was looking at the list, and the only pumpkin thing they had was from Jolly Pumpkin. And it was a pumpkin tart. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm in. Was it tart? Yeah. Was it super pumpkin-y? Not really. But if you kind of squint at it, you can get a little like, nutmeg and cinnamon out of it. But it was fun. It kept me curious.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, just making the Staghorn last as long as I can.
Seems fair. Mm-hmm. Seems fair. One more thing I will say about the beer that I was happy to be able to do at Swansea was Will Be. Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry.
Damn.
No, it was. But I feel like so much of the scratch beer that we have on and that we get in bottles is like the real like funky stuff. But when you go to Scratch, the majority of what they have is like clean, drinkable beers. And we had their Sycamore Lager on cask, and I think I heard a couple people saying that they hadn't had scratch beer that tastes like that before. And to me, that's like what my favorite scratch beers are like that. So that was really cool for me.
I was talking with Ari, my friend I was referencing earlier, who helps me brew everything it is, and he was talking about being down at Scratch after he had that beer, and being down at Scratch with his girlfriend and being secretly underwhelmed and being like, this beer it's fine. And then bringing the beer back to Chicago and tasting it, be like, oh, it tasted just fine there because it tastes exactly like that place smells and feels.
Yeah.
And like, I know we talk about this all the time. We might want to just change this name of the podcast to the Scratch Hype Hour, but
right.
He was like, he doesn't even listen to this podcast and know that we talk about that stuff all the time, but he's just like, yeah, it was because I was in the setting drinking beer that was so of the place, it was like camouflage.
It felt ordinary there.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
Sycamore Lager from a tree on the property.
Yeah. And served out of a cask, not made by any of the people at Scratch. So I mean, lame.
The cask wasn't.
That cask wasn't.
You telling me Aaron didn't make?
They're
that
not even
cask?
trying anymore.
No,
they're commercial now.
Yeah, it had like plastic bits on it.
They sold to Kieran.
It had an actual coupler. Speaking of selling and buying and stuff like that, should we get into it?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, do we want to talk about buying or do we want to talk about coming or going? Where do we want to start, Mike?
Let's do coming.
Coming. Okay. Well, what's coming is a pilot project in Wisconsin. What?
It's nothing.
Mike has a beautiful brain.
Yeah, he does.
got a bad brain.
Yeah. But you want to talk about, that's all you ever want to talk about, is, it's, so Pilot Project bought is it just Milwaukee?
Is it like a KFC kind of thing where it's MKE?
But it stands for Milwaukee Brewing Company, right?
Maybe. I mean, KFC doesn't stand for chicken anymore.
Right.
But yeah, Milwaukee Brewing Company, I think is what we'll call it for the...
And I think it had been out
show.
Out and about that they had been looking for a buyer or were going out of business.
They were about to be auctioned off.
Yeah. And you were upset by that because you were probably ready to pick them both.
I got to get one of them 100-barrel brew houses, my guy.
Yeah.
The demand's there.
I got to brew a year and a half's worth of beer in one go.
Then think.
Oh, wait, a year.
Then you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. You just like sit back.
Yeah.
And let the money roll
Kick
in.
back.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then hand bottle it.
Exactly.
The volunteers
Once
are
you
for.
had the priming sugar, you can't stop. So
Yeah. Go. So Pilot Project, and for those of you who don't know what Pilot Project is it's a small brewery. It's been around just a couple of years. How long has it been?
like 3 years.
Yeah, 2, 3.
I think it was 2019 that they opened.
And they are, I think they consider themselves like an incubator, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a .com incubator, but for breweries. And there's been a couple of those around.
They talk about like being a record label. They're an incubator, but they're like a record label where they put out your beers on their label.
Got it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a huge step for them because they were on a pretty small system and now they're on a giant system, relatively speaking. And I think someone here has already written about them, right, Carl? Did you write anything about it?
A little bit. I got onto their. I had kind of poked them for a little while after a site called On Milwaukee had the scoop like 2 or 3 weeks ago. They were the first people to report that Pilot Project was taking this huge swing, and everybody was a pretty wait and see. And then just in the last. I think at the end of last week, they announced that they had acquired like millions and millions of dollars of investment money.
It was $8 million, something called like
$8 million,
BevNet.
which can you buy that place for $8 million? Is that an $8 million buy, or do you? It's huge.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's probably an $8 million buy with what equipment's going for right now.
and so
And they didn't own the building either. They took over the lease, which is like 36 years left on it or something like that.
So like what I've been trying to think about over the last, since the news broke is like, has anyone jumped up in scale, like from Pilot Project, small place in Logan Square, jumping up to this place that has I think that turnkey, it's like 70,000 barrels and it can go up to like 200,000. Like, is there anything like this in memory? Because it's a huge swing, and like the plans they announced are super ambitious. That's not just we're going to go and we're going to like take our brands and send them everywhere. They're talking about like coast to coast distribution and adding 5 to 10 brands a year. And their 5-year plan includes similar tap rooms and incubators in like Los Angeles and Miami and like and London. They are already talking about going international. So it's wildly ambitious, and from a place that like I really kind of didn't see this coming, and maybe that's on me. Maybe you guys know more about that.
It really smacked of reading it. It smacked of like a brewery in 2014 whenever all the people saw was up and to the right as fast as it can go, being like, we're going to be distributed in Moscow and we're going to have a tap room here and here and here. And like, maybe if you have that BevNet money, you can pull those things off where you like, but it is a very big swing, and hopefully it works for them. I mean,
I know that
they're picking this up because Milwaukee Brewing Company took a huge straight swing in 2018,
right?
And
so
look how that worked out for them.
And so like they're
a way more established brand, and so
to your thing of like has anything like this happened? I think we're in a very particular time of there being a lot of breweries like that tried to take those big swings, and maybe they missed by a couple years, or the branding wasn't a national brand, and so there's a lot of pennies on the dollar equipment and facilities that's really starting to come available right now. Like I follow these auction websites and get emails from them, and there's at least a new brewery every week, if not 2 or 3. And so, we're not hearing a lot about like, oh, the breweries are closing because they close quietly. But this is going to be. I feel you're going to see a lot of people, not people moving into facilities. We're like, that's crazy, but because they probably got them for relatively cheaply. $8 million obviously is not cheap. This is a huge play. This is not like we scraped together some money and bought this derelict equipment.
It's funny when you started saying these plans to have this national distribution and stuff like that. I remembered that. A former Lagunitas sales rep came in and introduced himself. Like, I mean, I know him, and he's with. He's with Pilot Project now. I'm not going to give out his name, but
I was kidding. I'm sorry.
I wanted to go. I ran and got his card because I wanted to see what his title was. And his title on the card isn't like sales manager or something like that. It's National Sales Director, which is kind of interesting. So, that's essentially
you dress for the job you want.
He was doing big sales, big time corporate sales for Lagunitas.
Right.
I mean, he was the type of guy who, I don't know if it's literally that, but it was like, the type of deals you do on the golf course, not store to store.
Right, and this might be a move where when you bring in someone like a BevNet, which is this, I went to their website yesterday while looking at the article, and it's not like the world that any of us run in, where we're just like, oh, we'll ask our friends and family, and maybe we'll get to 6,000 barrels. It's like people that started a chain of of liquor stores that sold it, and then parlayed that into this and that, and then it's a bunch of investment capital and special guy. One guy that was went to West Point, was in the Army, then worked for like Bain. Like it's people that like they're like slumming it because this is fun for them. But it's like $8 million is like whatever to give to this project if it can really turn into that. And they might be the people that have those types of connections of being like, hey, let's get maybe incubation.
You want to get into Costco?
Maybe incubation no longer means like, oh, you're a brewery that hasn't made any beer ever before, and now we're going to make you, a couple hundred barrels of beer a year. It's that like, oh, you're a brewery that makes, like 1,000 barrels of beer a year, and it's not like we're not contracting, but it's like, now your brand is going through our incubator where we can put you in our tap room in London or whatever if they ever get to that point.
Or if they can do national distribution deals, then it's like, I said Costco, but it could be something where it's like you're not selling your 24 packs, but maybe it's like there's a Pilot Project 24 pack and it's 2 each of 12 different beers, or 1 each of 24 different beers, or something like that, and you could be in that. And wow, it's crazy.
It's a swing no one's taking right now, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like trying to steel themselves because it's still tough times, but to be aggressively moving like this is great for them. I hope it works.
The other thing that's kind of wild to me is that, like, if you look at the language that they use, like, I feel like 5 years ago, there would be a lot more sneering at this. And the vibe I kind of get right now is like, fair play, see what you can do with it. But like all of the language is well, let me read you one of the quotes from the press release. This is a part of a quote from Dan Abel, who is listed as a co-founder and CEO. By bringing Pilot back to Wisconsin, where Jordan and I went to school, we are introducing a business focused on catalyzing innovation to the birthplace of disruption in brewing. We are eager to participate and continue the legacy of innovation rooted in the city and support creativity and brewing nationwide.
Okay. So here's one thing I will say. These are local guys to Chicago.
I really hated that.
But what I will say is, you know what? It sounds like somebody who has been talking a lot to venture capital people. And some of these things are like top of mind to them.
For sure.
That's what it sounds like. And even when I heard read at the very end, in fact, I had glossed over it until Cal, right before we went on, was mentioning like London and Miami. I was like, what? I didn't read that. He's like, didn't you read the article? I was like, I did. And I ran back and I looked at it. I was like, oh, it's like the second to last sentence. And that also to me sounds like someone who needs to like justify to venture capital why they need to, do that.
It could be them, and it could be the venture capital, right? The venture capital puts the money, and they're like, "Well, we need to 8 or 10x this, so you can't. We're not going to do that just with the Costco deals. So, tap rooms here, build that revenue, and then spin it off to someone else too.
Yeah, and
maybe I don't know.
At this point,
I can't say
more power to them.
Yeah, but there's I wonder if that was always the idea when they opened this like relatively teeny tiny place in Chicago to in 5-10 years be all over the country. And that this would be the next big step. It seems hard to believe because I think maybe the market has changed to allow that, and they're thinking there's going to be all these
I think the big
dinosaurs you can get that are just going out of business, and you can get them pennies on the dollar and start something new in its place at a fraction of the price.
Probably something like that. I mean, just like this is very unscientific, but I was in there maybe a month ago brewing with Funky Town, and if their plan was to be a national brand, they didn't build that facility that way. It's 80% tap room, 80% places to sit and drink beers, and about 15% a place to make and house beers. And they're self-distributed here, so if their plan was to do that, there's not a lot of space back there to do all those operations. So either that says this was definitely the first step in something larger they were doing, or it says they just did the numbers of if we sell X amount of barrels over the counter, we're going to be a pretty profitable business. And then this became it could mean either of those things, but they definitely weren't meaning to be a national brand out of that space.
I also, when I had met with them years ago, initially, it didn't sound like that was the pitch they were going for, which doesn't mean that it isn't valid. It doesn't mean that it isn't something that they came to and kind of realized that the market is changing and there's an opportunity now. I don't think it's necessarily better or worse. Like a big company facilitating tiny people to get a foot in the door. And now, frankly, these people can facilitate them longer. Pilot project can now, rather than as soon as you'll outgrow them pretty darn fast. Now, maybe you don't.
I mean, when I was there, they had a meeting at 2 or 2:30. We're like, hey, we have to hop off the brew house and sit down with Dan and talk about this thing they're doing. I didn't know exactly what it was, but it was it was this. It was them being like, we want you to be one of the brands involved in this.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it goes from just a little home for your tap room, which is kind of like what District Brew Yards kind of is as well, to if it's a record deal, then it's maybe one of those ones where it's going to be a multi-album deal that you're signed to, and hopefully you don't have to change your brewer's name to a symbol to be able to get out of your contract with them.
Well, there was this record label that I interned at when I was in college called Aware Records, which was this tiny little record label in Evanston, but they signed people like Train and Five for Fighting and John Mayer.
Hell yeah.
But they signed them as independent artists, and they had this relationship with Sony where when one took off, they'd be like, hey, this one's selling like crazy, so now they're a Sony artist, and so
Subsidiary
this
of a
seems
bigger-
A true incubator.
This seems like something that would be more similar to that, where they have this one in Chicago, and if it works well there, they scale these brands up.
You mentioned Funky Town. I figured for listeners, whether you're from Chicago or not, to localize the brands we currently have. I biked past there yesterday. They were mobbed Monday Trivia, every seat full. Pull up the site, a couple of breweries that maybe you've heard of. Here's who currently is brewing there. Flora Brewing, Funky Town, Mike brewed with them. ROVM or Rovum Hard Kombucha, Azadi Brewing, and Brewer's Kitchen.
Brewer's Kitchen is their house brand. I think
House brand, okay.
I think Rovum might
And
be-
packed on a Monday night.
as well.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yep.
And June Shine actually technically started out of there too.
Okay.
Did it really?
Yeah, June Shine's first batches came out of Pilot Project.
Even though they're based out of San Diego?
Their first batches. There's one of the two founders is from here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so like their first batches came out of Pilot Project.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah,
All right. Well, already success stories.
they launched one. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Another interesting wrinkle, not to move it from Pilot Project, is that they bought all of the facilities and yet bought none of the intellectual property or the recipes from Milwaukee Brewing Company.
Yeah, that was
Did
up in
not
the air
care.
for a few days.
Yeah, and so Eagle Park, which is a brewery up in that area, bought the intellectual property and the recipes, which is kind of an interesting wrinkle to. Is OG going to live on?
Right.
Is that how you say? That's how you say that,
OG
right? The
wheat.
OG wheat.
OG Wit, yeah.
Yeah, but it's OII, right?
2 eyes.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with OG. Yeah, OGI.
Or is it O-GII? That's the one with Jasmine? Jasmine tea?
So let me ask this is what's preventing the breweries currently brewing out of Pilot Project is the bottleneck brewing time, brewing capacity. And if that's not the bottleneck, then Pilot Project is going to have to start finding some more brands. And I know they want to do one every 3 to 6, bring a new one on every 3 to 6 months. But I mean, they're going to have to. I mean, then again, if they bought it pennies at the dollar and they've got all this money, they
Still
could take their time.
$8 million. It's a lot of money. We're not sure how much of that was just like money they put into Pilot Project or how much the sale was actually for. That's still private. But they raised at least $8 million. I think
But that's a good question because like when they walk in there on day one, like they don't have a flagship that they need to blast far and wide.
Right.
You know, like their day one decisions are going to be very interesting.
Well, I mean, I think it's a 15-barrel brew house, maybe a 10-barrel brew house. And so going from 10 to 20-barrel batches or 15 to 30-barrel batches to immediately a 70-barrel batch is going to be like, what beer do they even...
Well, chain authorizations are going to be huge, right? In terms
Right.
of picking which brand do they scale. Funky Town is in Whole Foods.
They're in Jewel. They're in Whole Foods.
And Jewel, it's like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I would guess that'd be maybe one of the leads if there were to be
And
one or two.
that's why you need a national sales director with a lot of existing contacts from his time at a giant craft brewery.
Right.
Interesting.
I wonder.
yeah.
I wonder how long they've had a relationship with this BevNet place, because I would imagine that, you know, they in the article said they did a family and like friends and family
raise
round
first,
of like $500,000, and then they were making beer, but like to make as much beer as they were making and sell it, I'm sure there's some sort of revenue split with the breweries. And then be able to afford like the infrastructure they have for marketing, and someone who is like a national sales director at a level like Lagunitas it doesn't bear out that the money they were making from selling that beer could afford that. So and $500,000, it sounds like a lot of money, is not that much money when you build out a whole brewery in the space as nicely as they did, and then operate with that money. So
Yeah.
I wonder if they've had this relationship for a little bit, and then they just found this opportunity. But that's pure speculation,
Yeah.
just based on the economics of
Interesting.
what I think might be happening.
Yeah. I'm also curious what's going to happen with the Pilot Project brand itself. Is that going to be something that they're going to put a lot behind, or are they going to be more focused on growing other brands?
Right, and it's really weird that
That isn't like a record label.
Their
There
house
isn't
brand.
a Sony band. There isn't a Sony
Right.
music band.
Well, they would have like the Wrecking Crew, but they wouldn't put
the
out
Monkees.
albums. Yeah.
The Monkees, maybe.
Well, their brand isn't even Pilot Project when they make beer. It's Brewer's Kitchen is like their
Right.
their house beers, which is kind of an interesting choice. But maybe it was to not take too much shine from the breweries that they're incubating.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm sure they're going to have to push the brand of Pilot Project as much as any of the individual breweries they have. Otherwise, it's just a contract brewery, and then that model's been done, and it's not. I don't know if it's worth $8 million of investment.
Well, wait. How does it matter if how their house brand? I mean, if it's just a contract brewery, it
doesn't have to be the
brewery.
house. Doesn't have to be like. No, they're an incubator, and so they're going to have to
Well,
attract.
it's different,
they're going to
too.
have to attract new talented people.
And do they do alt? They
Continually.
do alt prop, right? Or no? Do they
I'm
allow
not sure
other
what their-
people
what their
to
structure-
brew on their system?
No.
Oh, okay. So then they
Yeah,
are.
You can
just
be
strictly
there, but
contract.
you're not technically supposed to touch anything.
So it's not all
So
proprietorship.
it's
okay.
set up as a contract.
Okay. Well, then how is it different than a?
Well, because if they're going to be someone that needs to attract new breweries all the time and like be someone that's building them up, being like, we're Pilot Project is more important than being like, oh, well, we're Octopi. And like the brand of Octopi isn't as important because we just have the space and it's cheap for you to do it here. If you're trying to attract brands that you're probably going to have to like siphon some of the money from more than just a regular contract facility, you're going to have a brand of your own that people are paying attention to and that people trust and believe in, right?
Well, I guess, yeah. The difference.
If you're incubating, it means you're doing something more than if you're just producing the liquid, right?
True, you're probably helping them with marketing and sales strategy and
That
stuff
might
like
that might have been phase one. Maybe phase two is just we're a really big contract brewery for the places for some of the ones we incubated in Chicago, or some we didn't.
And maybe we help. You go into our portfolio almost like, and we sell you as part of this portfolio.
I mean,
now.
that's how their sales work currently, right?
Yeah.
When you talk to that sales rep, he's selling you Brewer's Kitchen and Funky Town and Adazi, and all those guys do some of their own sales as well. But it's like you buy it all from them. It's not like they're out there delivering it or doing all the sales themselves. Certainly some of it. Some of those relationships are based on the incubated breweries.
So then I guess the self-distribution model does then differentiate it from a Great Central or an Octopi or someone like that. A more traditional, or in the case of Great Central, even a contract brewer with a house brand, right? Because there is Great Central branded beer, but it is a little bit different.
Right, but legally in Illinois, I'm not sure it is in other states, you can't make more than 30,000 barrels a year and self-distribute. So I don't know if that they're making 70,000 or whatever it is, and they flip the lights on there, that they have the capacity of making, if they're allowed to self-distribute here anymore.
You certainly
might just
can
be in
self-distribute from out of state, but I don't know where that limit, that ceiling is.
Right.
But they could always, you could be making 100,000 and 30,000 of it is self-distributed in Chicago, and then the other 70,000 has to go through.
You can only self-distribute 7,500 of it, but you can't, if you make more than 30,000, you can't self-distribute at all.
Oh, okay.
But that's in Illinois, so I don't know if it's different for like the reciprocity with Wisconsin or whatever. But I'm sure that's not really their issue. Like they're trying to be a national brand,
Right.
so I'm not sure they're like.
Well, I wonder what the rules
I don't
in
know,
Tokyo
what if
are.
it makes it- yeah, if we make 70,000 barrels, we can't self-distribute the 7,000 in Illinois anymore.
I think
I don't
suffice
think
to
they
say, this is unlike anything we've heard about in the past 5 years. And as an incubator at this scale, Karl, does that track with your understanding of the situation too?
There's a lot of places that have done little parts of what they've done, but like no one's done all of this as a whole. There's been other incubators, there's been other contractors, there's been other people that acquire huge spaces that maybe they don't know what to entirely do with it yet. But like to do all of these things at once and to be a 3-year-old brewery that just survived pandemic times and made it through that, and now to jump up to this, it's just wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it could genuinely be the biggest swing we've seen from any Illinois brewery. Like, I mean, think about who,
a while,
like,
yeah.
what's the biggest like expansion you like, at least of like
Lagunitas.
immediate capacity? Lagunitas.
Yeah,
but that's not,
I was
that's
thinking
not real.
Lagunitas too, but
that's the
a much
California
more
brewery that
established
already
brewery.
had, that moved here to do that. Right? They were a nationally distributed brand nearly.
Then Revolution would be the next biggest after
Right.
that,
Yeah.
The Goose,
which is a huge swing.
the Goose
Right.
International
But-
outposts don't count in this case. Like the Brazil,
That's by that point, I feel
Seoul,
like that's
London.
That's Budweiser, like, right? That's like, which is valid.
Yeah, you're playing
like,
with house money.
right? Where like they don't do that. The only reason they buy your brand is to try to do that with it, especially when they buy that first craft brand. But this is the first one that's like remaining independent, taking some investment, obviously, but. Like, even when people were like, it only goes up and to the right as fast as it possibly can, I don't think anyone swung this big. And that it could be
swung this big. Now, are you saying swung this big in buying MKE, or swung this big in buying MKE and saying that's just the beginning? We're going to be in LA and Miami.
that one.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
just
that's a product of the
line.
time, too.
That's just a line in a article.
It could be a product of the times too, where like you just didn't say that stuff in 2014. Like it was implied, but you weren't like, you're like, no, we're just going to try to sell all this beer in Chicago. It's like, all right, sure. you are.
I just thought of something that could be a similar swing and has been received wildly different. And it's a little place called Kings and Convicts.
yeah. That's fair.
They're still kicking.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That was a huge swing from a brew pub buying something that had
Brew
been
pub with most of the square footage taken with golf simulators.
right.
It's awesome.
And then now it's
Buying Ballast Point.
They bought a formerly $1 billion asset.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you're
okay,
right. Yeah,
you're
there you
right.
go. Yeah.
That's the biggest.
That's
you're
more
right.
than 8.
Yep, found it.
And I wasn't talking like dollars spent either, but like, yeah, that's definitely the biggest.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's another like odd circumstance though.
Yeah. Should we go into the next brewery, or do we want to go freshen up our beers, or we want to take a 5-minute break, or we want to keep going, Mike?
Let's take a little break.
All right. Okay. Why don't we take 5 minutes then, and then we'll come back and keep talking about, I don't know, let's just talk about beer a little bit more.
Okay.
All right. See you soon.
And we're back. Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm Mike Shalal, your co-host from Is Was Brewing. I'm here with my co-host Chris Quinn.
Hello.
We're with Karl Klockars of Guys Drink Beer. It's guysdrinkbeer.com, right?
There's an ING. You're very
Drinking.
close. It's
Guys drinking beer. Okay.
It is the act of drinking beer by the guys.
Nice. It's
that
an active
who write about it.
active website.
three
That's
guys.
And of
Three guys.
voiceover fame. And then we have Karl.
I will trade voiceover services for beer. This is I'm
That's a
perfectly willing to barter.
That's a good deal.
Would you
It is.
trade? Would you trade for Dovetail and His Was? Would you get a little mule situation going on for Upper
Yeah,
Michigan?
happily.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, got to find something for you to voice over.
Right.
And then we've
Get those advertisements running on Lumpin' and let's talk.
got the funky monk himself. Calvin.
Mixed firm goddess.
Yeah.
If you're calling me the funky monk,
The Funky Monk.
So you were dressed as,
I
right?
like that tag. Yeah. Hey,
You're a big chili peppers guy.
I love chili peppers.
Big
Yeah, make a lot of chili
RHCP.
crisp, and big Red Hot fan. Love the Renaissance. Love the they're riding the wave right now. They're just having fun out there. Seriously, you cannot ask for anything more.
I thought you were talking about the actual Renaissance because you were wearing like a friar's frock. You're talking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers
Yeah,
Renaissance.
were there turkey legs at the end of the show? Or when are we doing that here?
I went to the Ren Fair this year. That turkey leg stinks.
Ooh.
Hot take.
Hot take.
There's no salt on it. It's just
Yeah,
an unseasoned, unbrined, overcooked
I had
gelatinous
one
turkey
ever.
You
leg.
didn't like that?
And
It was trash.
at a F1 race, probably close to 20 years ago now.
Yeah. And I was on
And turkey
edibles,
legs.
so it
Oh,
should have
boy.
tasted great.
Interesting. Interesting.
It was like 2 milligrams. That was
Oh, you're
Let's talk more.
Microdosing
yeah.
edibles.
How much? Yeah.
microdosing the Ren Fair. Trying to connect everything.
who's got a joust?
So we talked about pilot project. Another project is Black Project.
Just the king of transitions.
Yeah. Another project. A project is not faring as well. Yes. You like that, right?
I loved it.
One good project, one not so great.
Yeah, Black Project. So I think, you're hearing now, so isn't it funny how for like the past 3 years almost, it's been like the breweries are going to start closing. Breweries are going to start closing. Breweries are going to start closing. And now breweries are starting to close.
It's happened way faster than I think anyone is realizing. Like, it's not like a lot of these breweries aren't even like announcing they're closing.
Right. Well, it's taken longer than I think a lot of people have speculated. But now that it's happening pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Black Project is, to me, noteworthy for a couple of reasons. One, because it's one of the first cool kid breweries to go under. And two, it's not really surprising. And those two things together are kind of maybe a little scary.
Right.
Yeah, so I think we've had James Howitt on the show before. Yeah, he's been on the show. So
nice.
I don't know. I would call him friend of a show. Didn't know if he enjoyed his time though. So
some friendships you don't always enjoy the time with people.
True. Okay. Yeah. Friend of me of the show.
Right. Friend of the show.
No, but. No, it sucks. I've been there. I've been to the brewery in Denver. So also that was kind of a bummer. But for me, I mean, let me ask you, Mike. What did you think when you heard the pilot project was going under? Did you think anything?
Pilot project's going under now?
I'm sorry.
Huge twist. New story.
Wait. Yeah, hold on. Let me rewind that. No.
That was like worse than Ballast Point.
Black. No transers. Black Project.
I got to be honest. I don't have much of a connection to the.
Okay.
I appreciate what they do, but I don't think I've ever had any of their beers.
Yeah.
But
you'd heard of them, right?
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. They were a big part of that, like, we make sour beer the right way movement that happened a few years ago.
I think they were that movement.
Well, it was like a bunch of other people that were there talking about it too, right? But I think they were the central voice of it.
Yes.
Them and Crooked Stave.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's sad. I wish breweries like that could exist, but I don't think the economics of it make sense in a modern America, to be perfectly honest. Like, even our beers, which are not nearly as long turnaround as there probably are, there's like huge cash flow problems of it takes me 2 months to turn a beer around, which, like, obviously lager takes long as well, but when you make as little beer as I do, and you're sitting on just like, oh, I had to pay this invoice like last month, and then now I have to sell this beer this month, and then that has to pay for it just becomes this, like, not shell game, but a really difficult and surprisingly complex financial, like, operation, which
becomes slow nickels rather than
slow pennies. Yeah.
Yeah, rather than slow dimes.
And it's just a style of beer that is not as culturally crushable. Like, you can drink a lot of them probably, but, like, it's just not the way that it's presented.
Never panned out. In the sour revolution or the sour bubble or whatever you want to call it in craft beer, it has, like, it's
quick sours.
It's popped.
Right?
I mean,
it's the quick. It's kettle sours. It's 4-week beers, fruited stuff, 15 packs, 12 packs of whatever Bell's summer fruited beer there is.
Right.
Black Project, $35, 750 milliliter, 6-month aged, conditioned and aged, mixed firm beers with guava. are a tough sell. Denver has 100 plus tap rooms, brew pubs, you name it. Chicago is not far off that either. But
Chicago has more per capita.
Really stiff competition. I've enjoyed a ton of Black Project beers. Traded for some. Went to the tap room in Denver after they'd rebranded from Former Future. But brewery that started in the early 2010s, Former Future, changed the name to Black Project. It's a bummer. Bummer for someone like me. I think we're all rooting for mixed fermentation, sour forward, like smart sour forward type breweries to succeed. And this is an indication that it's really freaking hard to succeed as a brewery in that vein.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if it's possible. I mean, I think there's always exceptions. But an American sour-only brewery, slow sour-only brewery.
It can't be your only job. Like, it just can't. Like, it doesn't work. Like, I think,
you got to copy.
Is there a parallel anywhere that we can point to? Just because I'm not super familiar with these guys, but you talk about the beers that they're making, and I'm just racking my brain trying to think about or maybe a better question is who do they want to be?
It was everyone wants to be Jester King, but Jester King's not Jester King anymore. So either you become something that's different, you have to evolve into something that is more broadly approachable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my first thought when I was reading the story was who in the Midwest is this like? And it's just I guess Transient came to mind first for me because they moved out of Chicago to make those kind of beers, and
Jolly Pumpkin.
They haven't been doing that for a long time though. They've been mostly selling hazy beers for
I think Jolly's
a long time.
Jolly's a good comparison. Yeah, so Black Project predominantly cool shipped beers, predominantly mixed firm beers, some IPAs in the mix. Very little distro to Chicago. Some stuff overseas to Etra Gourmet, but you're paying $55 a bottle at that point. Jolly's the closest parallel I can think of, Carl.
Okay.
In terms of intensity and rigidness in principle.
And
they make an IPA now.
But also, sorry,
just doesn't translate. The ethos of that does not translate into value for the customer. I'm almost certain of.
And also, it's you're going to. I think history has now shown that style just is not broad enough. Because if you look at the people that kind of, I would say maybe accepting Jolly Pumpkin, all the other giant players who kind of were the archetypes or the templates for people to kind of iterate off of were not only sour. So you have Russian River and Lost Abbey and New Belgium, places like that.
I think there's some that exist in America. There's Fair Isle and Floodlands and Afterthought. That's not even his full-time job, but it's a very different. You cannot think of it and approach it like you're a brewery, or that you're going to behave like you're a brewery. You have to have way more money than you want to actually have to be able to sustain you have to be more like a spirits company, right? That you're I don't know. I think about this stuff all the time. I never intended to be a Saison only brewery. I want to be a Saison focused brewery. Mm-hmm. But now all we've made for the last 3 years is Saisons because of kind of physical and financial limitations. That I don't have any of the packaging equipment or any of the actual better fermentation, temperature controlled equipment. Mm-hmm. And going forward, the intention isn't to just make Saison forever, partially because I see this and don't believe it's a financially stable thing to do, and partially because I want to make and drink other things. But
of course, but I wonder, someone else that I think of them would be someone like DeGard would be someone else I would think is in that same vein. And I heard that they're talking about distributing to Chicago. I'm curious if that's the case or not. And I've heard it from a pretty good source. So to me, I've always, when breweries come into Chicago from far away that are kind of, especially when they're hyped breweries, but even when they're not, when I was back when everything was always expanding, I was just like, awesome. And before I was in the industry, I was like, sweet. Now that I'm in the industry, and if it's a brewery that I like and admire, I always think, oh no, I hope everything's okay.
I think we gotta get past
funny.
that, though, especially for these types of breweries. These types of breweries have to behave much more like wineries.
Yeah.
And no one is out there being like, this French winery sells beer in America. What a terrible winery. Right? It's like, it takes forever to make this stuff. It takes forever to grow it. It's expensive to make. And the way to actually make money doing it is probably to be miles wide and inches deep.
Jolly Pumpkin, baby.
Yeah.
That was the Jolly Pumpkin model.
And beer doesn't have the luxury of the infrastructure and culture that wine does, where there's some stuff that wineries make that only goes to restaurants because they have 80 bottle wine lists deep, and people go and without batting an eye, spend $65, on a low end on a bottle of wine to have with dinner that night. Like I just did that with my girlfriend. I would never be like, let me get this $65 bottle of beer and we'll split it over like 5 courses of it doesn't translate the same way, but it needs to move like that. Like that's the economics of it almost as much as like, it takes you a year and a half to make this thing from start to finish. You need the square footage to store all of it. You need to buy the raw ingredients because you don't grow it on your own family vineyard. You had been your landed gentry since 1596.
Right.
It's harder than making wine, and wineries still tend to go miles wide and inches deep. Like sometimes there's like people send like 6 bottles of some of these fancier wines to Chicago. Like it's like that's and then so they can spread it everywhere so they can actually sell all of it. Anyway,
3 accounts.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, so we're seeing breweries like Black Project close, and they're so good. I've had the beers; they're great. Mm-hmm. Chris has had the beers. Is this indicative of beer drinkers' habits? People like me and Chris prioritizing less of those kinds of beers and more of like, give me a Dovetail Lager, give me an Iswa Saison that's $14 a bottle, give me something more.
$9, baby.
Or $9 at $3.75. Is it customer
500s.
habits that are getting a little bit less precious and more about what's good, that's dry, that I know I can get, that's like more ordinary? Are we essentially, are millennials killing the Saison breweries, the mixed fermentation breweries?
Well, I'm not a millennial, but
I think it's just like the way those beers taste is not as crushable and approachable as like we just drank 6 Spite Lights in 40 minutes between like the 4 of us. Like
it's 4%.
Even if a mixed culture Saison was in a 6-pack for $9.99, we're not going to crush them that same way. It's just not how our palates are built.
But I feel like I come from a subset.
But it's also not financially viable for that style. Sorry.
I think some of us come from a subset. Maybe Karl feels the same way. You can chime in a second. Where I'm buying less of those kinds of super special, $65 wine-esque beers at dinner than I used to 5 years ago, and maybe those habits are catching up to those breweries. Karl, do you think there's any credence to that?
Well, you're making me think about something that Chris, you've talked about a lot, which is what happens when we get to good enough. Maybe I don't want to spend X dollars on one bottle of something that's really good when I can spend $12 or $13 on a 4-pack of something that's pretty good and gets me to the same place that I want to go to.
Yeah, I think that market is so hard right now. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that market, because even if the Guard comes in, do you know who you're competing with? I mean, just from the looks of it, Tilken and Driefontein have also expanded.
Right.
They've got tons of stuff. They have tons of fruited stuff. And then, you have the Belgians, man. The Belgian lambics are still, if they're not literally always the best, they're going to be such a sure shot.
It's like the only style of beer in America where people are like, I don't want it to come from here. Like, I want to have the one from the guys that made it real good forever. Like every other style, it's like, well, I'll just get the one down the street. But that mixed culture Saison, or beer, it's like
the superstars. Now the mixed culture Saisons, I think the U.S. guys still kind of have it, but
But it's not. I don't think
So hard.
It's still like people would be like, I'd rather pay $30 for a bottle of Dree than I would pay $14 for a bottle of a local one.
Yes.
So
I agree, but that's
the only
not
thing
a mixed
like
culture saison. That's a goose. I think goose and lambic. When you start getting into stuff that's that niche, I think it just becomes so hard. And I think when I was in a black project recently, but the last time I was there, I mean, stuff was so sour. They were just going so deep into the sour game that they were really in lambic territory at that point. They were more sour than all but like maybe Hansen's or something.
That was my experience too.
Yeah, it
Pretty
was
acidity forward, less Brettanomyces.
Yeah.
And I think even
Musty, funk
among the nerds that drink that stuff, that's fallen somewhat out of fashion.
Yeah.
Like the super sour version of those
And
things.
as
being
it
the
should.
ones that- yeah.
It has for me.
As it should.
Yeah.
Let them eat.
We're
Let
on
them
to
die,
smooch now.
says Chris. Yeah.
No, I mean we've talked about it on this show before. I mean that we can like just like I don't know if it's like eating our own tail or whatever the saying is. Yeah, but it's like we've talked about how those breweries in America have gotten more sour, and is it because people are sharing it 20 different ways and they want the most impactful sip they can possibly have? So Untapped, the highest, the more sour, the higher rated. So they keep making more sour, more sour, more sour, more sour. And then is it almost like the opposite of when Schlitz was trying to get lighter and lighter and lighter until it just collapsed? Was it like they were going so sour, but they were going for a smaller group of like hype boys who were trading this stuff, and their stuff became undrinkable. And there were some incredibly highly regarded breweries that I found that happening to.
I think it's not. I don't think it's just like trying to get Untapped scores. I think it's partially your culture shifts over time. Like your actual like the culture you're fermenting stuff with can shift and become more acidic over time, and also if you're regularly blending sour beers, your palate will acclimate to sour beer over time too. The same way like your palate can get more like acclimate to bitterness if you're drinking a lot of bitter beers over time. So it could just be like their process.
Yeah, but tell that to Frank Bone, dude. Like it doesn't have to.
Yeah, Mike.
I mean,
you tell him.
Yeah, but
write him a letter.
There's a difference between generations of people doing this
Yeah.
and one guy who started brewing beer 15 years ago.
Sure.
Evolving in his own palate.
Well, maybe then what I'm saying is that then maybe they're not as good at it.
Or they just haven't gone through those phases.
Yeah.
And like lambic breweries are
Maybe.
a similar thing that I was talking about with wineries, where it's like it's been in most of them, except for a handful, it's been in their family for generations, or it's been a brewery for generations.
And they almost went out of business.
Right,
And
they
the
almost
U.S.
went out of
market
business.
saved
and
them.
they own some sort of crazy piece of real estate somewhere in a very expensive part of Belgium, or that they don't really have to pay that much for anymore. They're not paying $18 a square foot.
Frank
or
Bone
whatever
keeps the
someone is
lights
paying.
on with back-sweetened lambic.
Right.
And a lot of the traditionalists poo-poo him and hate him for it. But, like, I never did,
Right.
personally. But it was
At a certain point, you've got to make a choice of, like, do I die on the hill of my artistic integrity for making these beers, or do I make something that isn't what I think is the
Cantillon
peak of
stayed
what
in
I'm
business
supposed
by becoming a museum and,
Right.
and getting, like, I think a lot of incentives based on it being a museum. So, like, people did what they had to do.
I was actually going through my QuickBooks recently because I had to like fix some stuff, and I had this one charge from like a museum when I was in Belgium. Like I didn't go to any museums, and like oh, it was Cantillon. It was like when I bought like a piece of like a ceramic mug that was from the museum, but when I bought the beers, it was from Cantillon.
Right.
Like it's very funny. Like I'm sure they have some sort of strict rules about that, but that was just an aside. I'm sorry.
Licensure.
Yeah. But, I mean, and then again, if as stuff gets, if you really have to figure out like where does your sour dollar go, if you're going to buy sours and you want to kind of, I think you don't want to spread them out. Then you probably want to just like, well, I gotta give my money back to the people that I think are the most important to stick around.
Right.
And even then, it would be the Belgians.
Well, do you think of it that's a pretty,
It would for me.
That's
Yeah.
pretty.
That's what I'm saying.
I think of it as like what one tastes the best.
Yeah.
Drie, Tilken,
Oh,
Bone, Jardin taste the best.
They do.
I don't think of it in terms of, I want them to stick around. I guess, of course, I do. But
Right.
do you differentiate between those
Well,
two?
I think that there are American versions that I've seen people like have seemed to have like held up against the Belgians enough that it is possible.
You're rooting for them. Like, okay,
Right.
that's cool.
I think Allagash Cool Ship is like phenomenal stuff. But again, it's and Degard. I mean, Degard has made spontaneous stuff that I've never had before, but that gets like incredible like reviews.
Spawn is great.
It's outstanding.
Yeah.
Heavily hopped. It inhibits the acidity level. You're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, if you're just going to give me like a straight lambic, I mean, some of the stuff from like Jardin, Bone Black Label, like Drie, that stuff's amazing. And then if you're going to give me fruited, like give me Tilken and Cantillon like any day. And like if you can compete with that, it's going to be like a brewery only, wait in a list, like wait in a line or be part of a society thing. And like, I guess I don't have to do that anymore.
And it's one of those only styles of beer that like has a very long shelf life if it doesn't get better with extended aging the bottle. Where like even stuff like Oktoberfest, where it's pretty sure that like most of the like German breweries that make good Oktoberfest make better Oktoberfest than most of the American breweries. But if you're gonna get a fresh Oktoberfest from an American brewery, you're gonna like enjoy that as much as like if you get like an old Oktoberfest from a German brewery. But like if you get like a year old Cantillon, oh no, like it's gonna taste better than like the
Right.
It's like not like a freshness thing. So like all of the ways that American breweries compete and outcompete like older or other like styles of beer doesn't exist for that style of beer. Mm-hmm. Even in like non-acidic saison, like fresh saison tastes great and totally different than like months old saison that's been shipped here.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not the same for sour beers. So it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to not be the only thing you do, or not be like an expensive thing you do as part of another brewery. So American sour ale is certainly on the decline.
Is it doomed? Are you declaring it doomed?
No, people will always make it, and there will always be people like Mike, an afterthought, who just love it so much that he finds time being a incredibly successful lawyer and also making his mixed culture sour.
I biked there a week ago, and I biked to get pizza, and then got them on the way back, and drank 3 beers that were like 3% ABV.
Yeah,
lightly
Table
tart.
Fest, right?
I forget the names. They were. I should have taken a picture.
They
of them.
had a table beer festival.
Oh my
a
goodness!
couple
Of
weeks
course
ago.
they did.
That was awesome.
I was
love it.
ecstatic, man.
Yeah, it made
amazing.
me appreciate flights of things, because it was like the lowest ABV stuff where I'm just like, nah, I'm just gonna get one or two of these. And then I was with Ari and his girlfriend. She loves flights. She's like, no, let's try all of them. I'm like, all right,
we're doing
I'm
flights.
Like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Like the acidity was different on a lot of them. I was a very anti-flight person, and shockingly, a table festival is the one where I'm like, no, I want to try a bunch of these.
Yeah.
I've realized I'm a very different person than most beer consumers.
So I don't think sour beer is dead. Is the sour brewery dead in America? I'll say all but.
I think the American sour brewery has been dead in America for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you wanted to start an all sour brewery, the time to do that was like 20 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the late aughts and early teens, you were flying high, and now your lights are on and maybe you're comfortable.
And
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like, we mentioned Spawn and we mentioned Allagash Cool Ship, but like, yeah, to your point, like they also make other beers in other styles that are wildly popular, and they get to use those to kind of fund the fun stuff that we really like.
Sure.
To do that 100%. I mean, Man, talk about, I'm sure it was a hard road to hoe, even in, when did that story say opened up in like 2016?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's tough no matter what. And last couple of years seems just like made it exponentially tougher.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's also one of those things that a lot of the beer that was probably being sold from breweries like that in 2016 and 2017, like was going into people's like cellars, and so they still haven't drank a lot of those, right?
Yeah.
They like,
Pipe fill, cellar fill,
right? Cellar fill, where it's like, oh well, that's good forever, so I'll just put that in the cellar, and then like the way a breweries make money is repeat sales. Like that's no. Like,
right.
I'm not like breaking new ground by that, but if people are buying your beer and just putting it in the back of their closet and forgetting they have it, and then drinking 2 or 3 of the 12 they buy a year, that's
right.
not
And then they come out
with,
well, this one has double the guava. This one has peach. This one has whatever. And I think people started being like, I've had a lot of these fruited ones. I might not have had that fruit, but.
And at some point, like, how different are those tricks or those methods of making beer than being like, this is Citra Simcoe Mosaic, like, or this is Citra Mosaic? And
frankly, I'm starting to see that in Tilken and Dree, and it worries me. Frankly,
I think they'll be all right.
I hope so. But I mean, it does, but it's like, I mean, is it just like because they need to have that many to get? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but Tilken's having they're doing a fest next month.
At Tilken?
No, all over the country.
Anything we should be mindful of here in
There's
town?
20 locations in the U.S., 2 of them in Chicago.
Tilken's
yeah,
ones?
so it's going to be us and Hopleaf, both. So 20 in the country, 2 in Chicago.
Nice.
And you could either opt for 5 different kegs, and then I think you get 5 other kegs that you can put on later. I don't know if I should be saying this, but or you could do 10 and 10. We got to put on 10 kegs, and I was saying, who
ain't got the juice like
who
Cantillon's got.
Who in the country can move 10, 20 liters of lambic? I said the only place that I could think with moving it would be back in the day Falling Rock or something. Like just
Maybe like Monks.
Monk's Cafe?
I don't think Monks could do it, man.
Yeah, no.
Maybe Hopcat?
It's too small.
That's Carl country.
Right.
Like,
that goes back to like these are not crushable beers, right? Like
I was going to say like Wrigley Field.
Yeah. That would be so sick.
Right.
You walk up, do I want
the pink one.
Bud Light, the Miller Lite, or the Tilken with the Pinot Noir?
200 liters of lambic on at one time. I mean, that's just so much. And frankly, it does concern me. Like, geez, looks like someone's got to move.
Are they?
Products.
Is that it, or are they trying to make? They're trying to make their own Zwanze Day. Is there like a version of it that's like Zwans? That's like we only do this for this one time a year, so you got to come and get it then. And there's also gonna be 4 of our other beers on there.
Yes. It's kind of that.
So they're trying to make their own Zwanze Day. I don't think that's like concerning as much as if it was like, here's 4 beers you've already had. Do you want to buy a 5th one, and then that's also something you already had, and then 5 more of those? Like,
right. I don't know. I'm a worrier. So
I think,
especially with breweries and people that I care about, and I like and care about Pierre Tilken. So
yeah, I think
want him to be okay.
To me, that sounds more like they're trying to create a vibe, the same way that Zwanze Day became a vibe.
Right.
They're only just like 20 years too late.
Anyway, next month.
Yeah.
So you can.
Sorry for starting your sour only brewery, Pierre.
So we've definitively decided that sour beer is dead as a whole.
That's what Mike said.
I feel like that.
Yeah, that's what Mike said.
That's a Nostra Douglas from years ago.
That sound you hear is a lot of business plans being dragged into the trash can.
Just keep your day job.
Or sorry, recycle bin.
Yeah.
In Chicago, it's the same thing, Carl. You might have a better system up there.
Oh boy!
Just
don't get us started on pack tax.
What So there's two things. I have a very quick letter. Do you want to just do a lighthearted letter that was hand delivered?
Yeah, is that it's on a receipt paper?
It seems to be on a receipt, piece of receipt paper.
There's attention Chris Quinn on it, like it's some sort of official
Yes,
memo.
looks like
this
it's
is how
on a
it was handed to me
boarding
like
pass.
this.
Oh, wow.
It was handed to me from
Is this
an
from
employee
Swansea
here.
Day?
No.
So, hi, Grace. Hi, Chris. I just wanted to let you know everything you did was awesome. Serge just said was sick.
Yeah.
But Collective Soul.
Shine
Well, I do
it
say,
out.
I mean, just get it here, and
Yeah.
I say just put it to attention, whatever, and it'll find its way to me. So that's what this person did, because it was handed by an employee of the Beer Temple. It was handed to me, and it was just like given to me. And if you want to hand a letter off, you should come to
Walk to.
3173 North Elston Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, 60618. That's the Beer Temple, and you can send it to the attention of myself, or to Mike, or Serge, or the Funky Monk. Anyone that I will make sure it gets in the proper hands. I promise. Or you could send an email to insiders@craftbeertemple.com. But anyway, this person, handwritten and handled. He says, "Dear Chris, I came all the way to the Beer Temple from Buffalo, New York. This might be your first written letter delivered in person." I'm not sure if that
It's
is
written
true.
in person too, not just delivered in person. But the first person to show up at the bar, like,
Don't
I'm going to write
say.
Chris a letter.
My question for you is, what makes a great bartender? Tommy G, go Bills. That's what he says.
Ooh.
Wow,
It's a nice. I like that question.
that's a good question.
So there you go. What makes a great bartender?
I think the biggest thing is that the bartender has to reflect the overall vibe of the place. Like, not every bartender, there's not like a universal, this is a good bartender to me. Like, if,
So very well put. I completely agree.
yeah, there's places where you want someone to come and like bullshit with you and chat you up, like small talk. And there's places where you just want to be left alone. And there's places where you want someone who's like highly knowledgeable. But I want that person to be a good reflection of the place I expected to be in.
Right.
That's for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah.
I do. Yeah, I was at the Charleston
Nice. That's a
last
great
week,
spot.
and they play great music, as you probably know, Serge. Maybe you don't know. He's shaking his head. No, you think they play bad music?
All right, we have to have like a podcast.
Wow.
You think
That's
they
a
play bad
sidebar.
music, or you have never
With
been
Serge,
there?
you know. So we'll take you there, Serge. Great spot in Bucktown, and good beer selection. Spiteful's on tap, and
See, I knew where this was headed.
and they had the,
They
like,
currently have a special on.
yeah, cool. They're working for the weekend.
Spite Light.
Anyway, it's a serve yourself place. Anyway, moving on.
Swipe your card. But DJ was mixing some records. Really good atmosphere, and the bartender was just really attentive to the customers. Like, I was geeking out with the DJ, asking about the vinyl. Some other customers, I think it just finished like a softball game. It's a really mixed crew of like people's energies, and the bartender did a really good job of like smiling. Hey, what's up? Here's the menu. Just meeting people where they were at, and then leaving them alone if they wanted to be left alone, and chit chatting if they wanted to. And there was maybe 10 of us at the bar, and I don't know, matching energies, I think is maybe a good way to put it, but also reflecting the specialty of the bar, which in this case is Charleston's good music, dancing later in the week, and just kind
Chill
of
vibes.
Chill vibe, yeah. Chris, have you been to the Charleston before?
No.
In Bucktown, but worth going. But I admired that about her. I didn't catch her name, but so every now and again, if I'm going to go like enter some work notes in my app for like sales calls, I want to just be left alone. And sometimes bartenders feel obligated. Well, you're sitting here by yourself. I'll, BS with you. And it's like, you know what? I don't really have the energy to do this right now. So it's no diss on them, but I like it when someone, two things, represents the values of the bar. Like, okay, cool, I'm at small bar. Like, I want a little chit chat, I want a little geekery, and you can get both of those most of the time at small bar. And then the second thing, is like, what's your thing? Are you like a really outgoing type? A lot of bartenders in Chicago are actors. So like you're really gregarious types, really eloquent and really energetic. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that. Karl, do you Do you look for anything in a bartender in particular in Michigan?
My initial gut response was some level of extroversion. And I say that as a natural introvert who is inclined to just like sit at the bar and stare at my phone. Sometimes I do kind of like being pulled out of that, and you have to have the right personality, but like you guys are saying, it's not like always on all the time. I mean, I remember, so like, I'm thinking back to a time when, like, you know, the Red Eye used to have those
R.I.P.
best bartenders of the year competitions, and they were always dudes that worked at cocktail bars, you know.
Right.
And to me, being able to mix together a 7-touch cocktail is not the definition of a great bartender. You know, that's a great recipe follower. A great bartender is someone that like owns the bar, you know, like a bartender is the conductor of a symphony on some nights, and the bartender's energy can like make or break an entire experience. And that is a incredibly rare gift. I mean, when I think about like some of the greatest bartenders that I've ever been witness to, like I think about just people that work at the Hooten Bar, you know, in Lincoln Square.
Oh, rest in
that
peace.
Just
Worked at the Hooten
God,
Bar.
don't even get me started.
Saddest.
But not a place that you go to for like beers that'll blow your mind. It's German beers. It's decent cocktails, but it's put together by people that, you know, when you're there at 1 o'clock in the morning, they are like making the party, you know? And so like beyond that, like, I don't know what else you need.
Yeah. I love that we're all kind of iterating off what Mike said, because I think you nailed it, Mike. So I'm just going to tell two stories that are very different, but they both just like nail the vibe, and they're two of my like favorite places. One I've talked about here a lot is Delilah's. I think those people just nail the energy.
I think it's the best bar in the country.
Yeah. They are so knowledgeable.
After the beer temple.
Yeah. And there's one bartender in particular who's been there forever. His name's Mike, not Mike Miller, and still remembers what I had. I'm talking about half a decade ago.
What?
Like, and I'm like a
gift.
variant on like, you know, Ed Ridour Scotch, and he's like, well, you had that one, and I was like, no, I haven't. And he's like, yeah, you did. And then my friend who was with me like, yeah, we did have it that one time we were here. I was like, oh yeah. So that's insane.
Wow.
First of all,
That's like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just had to like go with Delilah's
Go
story.
for
Like,
it.
probably the same guy of like, that bar is like the
Flat top
coolest.
Mike.
Just, yes.
Yes.
The coolest combination of a dive bar and the highest end whiskey bar
Yeah.
I've ever been to.
I don't think you can go into Delilah's and not immediately feel 20% cooler.
yeah,
It's
true.
I mean, it's one time I was in there and it was slammed and it was going wild, and I ordered some sort like $48, $50 pour of bourbon because that was the era of my life I was in, and he stopped and like just like talked to me about it and like explained it. Not explained it, but was like talking to me about like, what do you know about this? And like, it was there are plenty of people trying to get their like Steel Cities or whatever the hell the $1 beer was.
And they'll rush around and they'll say, okay, give me a couple minutes.
Yeah.
They'll find the time and then sit there and give you.
Right.
And if they're slammed, you might only get 2 or 3 minutes, but you get 2 or 3 minutes of their attention on a Saturday night or something.
And it was something
that.
like, I don't know how trained this is or how like intentional it is, but they understood the people that are coming in to buy the $50 pour of bourbon, or the you should like not that like I wanted to them like thought I should have gotten special attention, but like it felt nice to like have them be like, well, what do you need from me about this thing?
Yeah.
And that was pretty. And I was like, I didn't need anything. I was like, I knew exactly what I was ordering and why I was ordering it. But that's something none of us can probably fully appreciate is the ability to really work a slammed bar and still make
the amount of energy that takes is unbelievable.
And make everyone feel like they're like seen and like appreciated and like part of the scene and party that Karl was talking about. Because like that's the
best
special
of the
part.
Best,
Of like
the best of the best. at a slammed bar, I mean, those are like elite at what they do. I think those people. I mean, a lot of people can serve a slam bar, and that's a skill as well. But the
Not
best
easy.
of the best can still give you an experience when it's a slammed bar, which is really cool.
Has
That's
Mike
like-
been on the show?
Mike
Yeah,
Miller?
yeah. Mike's
Big-
been
big-
Mike's had his parents in the peanut gallery as well one time.
I've done my.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, you
it's
too,
It's
yeah.
a Mike only type thing.
But I have a second. Or do you
Yeah,
want to
go
talk
ahead.
more about?
No, go.
Okay.
You go.
The other one, completely different, was in Antwerp at the Culminator.
Cool.
Wow.
And it's known for having like a phone book sized beer list. And they also have a bunch of stuff that's like multiple places where there's just beer everywhere. There's plenty of beer behind the bar. There's some beer on draft. And then they have this little, I don't know, back, like, what would you, like a very big pantry maybe, that is just stocked with bottles of beer. And then there's the basement. And you go in and it's like this Belgian woman, elderly Belgian woman in like a long to her ankles dress, and is, smiley and friendly. And then there's an old man who looks very kind of professorial. He's got like gray, very puffy, fluffy, curly hair, like white hair, and he has like a cardigan on, and he took up an entire booth, and it was all filled with newspapers, and I mean stacks of them. On the sides, they were 2 feet high, and in the center they were just spread out in front of him, newspapers everywhere.
It's like a character from a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, dude. So we went there and we were digging like deep into the book.
So like old Demolin,
Like just crazy. We would just go through the whole book and be like, what about this? What about this? What about this?
04 or beer.
And birth year beers, stuff like that. So not many of them were up there or even in the pantry. So she would call to him. He would like sigh, close the newspaper, stand up, take a scarf. He would sit there. They would like say something back and forth for a little bit. They were like bickering. They were obviously married because he would like wrap a scarf around his neck like twice. It was like
Belgian guy.
Dickensian, like this giant long scarf. He looked like Bob Cratchit. Would then grab a flashlight and just walk down the stairs,
Hop
down the
into
cellars.
a little like caboose and like
take
miner's rail
forever.
car and
Would take forever. By the end, we were laughing about how long, like, what was he doing down there? He had like a man cave, and he would just like sit down there and,
Yeah, he was
and stuff
watching
like
football.
that. We timed him. I said, this has to take 15 minutes. And one of the times we timed him, and it took 15 minutes. 15 minutes not after you order it, but after he goes down the stairs, we're like, okay, and start. Comes back up.
you think
crunch,
that's organized
crunched.
down there?
I know, crunch.
There's no way.
The comes up. He has the bottle in his hand. Just like more bitching to his wife. Obviously, it wasn't where he thought it was supposed to be, or something like that.
Americans.
And yeah,
And dumb old stuff we have.
and then she would present the beer. So that was like, it was almost like a show. It was just amazing to watch these two people just like go into the cellar and do it. And she was very pleasant, and that was a beer service experience that I loved. I wouldn't say that was
That's not what makes a great bartender.
No.
Long scarves and curmudgeonly disdain for your.
I was going to say, this sounds a lot like my experience at Sergio's World of Beers in Louisville, except I was the person walking around in the basement, and they were equally unpleasant across the board.
Yeah, I've not heard the best things about that place.
Did you work at Sergio's?
No,
I thought
I was
you were
a
saying it.
paying customer.
Yeah. I've been there too. It was a time.
Yeah, but anyway, that
It was the West Lakeview era of that's what makes a good beer place. Having stuff.
having stuff, right? But yeah, so the culminator is the having stuff beer capital.
OG having stuff.
It's just crazy. I mean, I was born in the 70s. Birth year beers, like it's yeah, we have that.
What one did you get?
I don't quite remember. I know we got a birth year beer for Steve Mastney that was a Dodala Still Knocked,
Oh wow!
which is
And you're mad it took him 15 minutes to find that?
no, I'm not mad.
1971.
Do I sound mad? No, we were
You waited
loving
45
it.
years.
We were
You didn't
cracking.
wait another
up.
15
Yeah.
minutes.
Because we would get the other thing is like they'd have like Westmalle on draft or something. So like we'll get a Westmalle.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
if we're
a side
drinking
beer.
Westmalle or a Orval, you know, or a West Veteran, like whatever. There's so much great stuff, and then we're gonna order, you know, a 1984, you know, Still Knocked or whatever it was, and like
That's awesome.
yeah,
Your birth year.
right,
1984,
no.
yeah.
So no, that was just a great service experience in its own way, and I think I bring it by the way that would never work in like any other scenario except that place. So I wouldn't want. In fact, it made that experience.
Yeah.
Like it I didn't want some guy who could tell me about, like I wouldn't want like a Pat Fahey, Master Cicerone to tell me everything about it and know exactly where it is and present it. That would have been awesome too. But
That's
that
different.
was even better.
That's a different vibe.
So if Ed
Yeah.
de Bevix in Belgium,
Right.
yeah.
And it took longer.
Yeah, this kid's
Right.
putting a straw on his shoulder every time they walked by.
Anyway, those are my two service stories that I have. I'm sure I could come up with many, 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 many more, but those are two that came to mind for me. And I
It's a
think
really nice letter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thoughtful.
great question.
Yeah. Thanks. Who was it? What was his name? Tommy G.
Is he?
Go Bills.
Is he from? Oh, he's a.
I'm a Bills fan now.
He should go to Delilah's.
Bills Mafia.
Bills fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're a New York guy.
What?
What the hell are you talking
Do you
about?
claim you're an East Coast guy? Do you claim any Bills Mafia fans in the family?
He's from Philadelphia, dude.
East Coast though. You can.
Yeah, it's all the same.
What do you think the East Coast
Yeah,
is?
Midwest. You
Buffalo
love-
is not on the East Coast. What
Not
are
on
you
the East-
talking
it's
about?
not on the East Coast. It's also
Have you ever
saying
been
that,
outside
like,
of like Rockford in Chicago?
No, there's a train
Oh,
that takes
Cubs
me.
fan, Cardinals fan, Cubs fan.
Oh,
same
you're from
thing.
St. Louis. Like you're a Cubs fan, huh?
The train goes a couple states over. That's about it.
You know, it's closer to go to St. Louis than it is to go from where Chris grew up to Buffalo.
Oh, much closer.
Well, that's a road trip.
Yeah, it's a
You
road-
Midwesterners think everything in the East Coast is so close to each other. Even stuff that's not on the East Coast, that's in the Erie.
I mean,
Get outta here.
Erie's probably considered Midwest, I would
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Anyway, Tommy G,
Get your geography right.
assuming he is from
Got
Buffalo.
roasted.
Thank
I
you.
dropped out.
What are we at, Serge? How much time we got? Okay. I think it's about time. We had one more story we're just not going to get to, but that's just fine.
The nature of the show.
It's the nature of the show.
Teaser for the Patreon
I want to thank,
episode.
yeah. But hey, if you have any other letters, again, we put it in the show notes, the address.
What else we put
The
in the show notes?
electronic.
You had something you wanted to put in the show notes?
He said we were putting something in the show notes, and I
that's-
immediately, as soon as he said it, was like, yeah, okay.
There's some comments.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I will say I want to plant a seed here. I've been working on some sea shanties at home, and
Okay.
I'd love to debut one around Christmas time. There's one sea shanty in particular, one about the Playpen in Chicago,
Playpen?
Genius.
and then there's
I don't know
one
what that
about it's a coastal. It's maritime law, of course. It's basically all these yachts get together right around Oak Street Beach.
Oh, yeah.
So there's
okay.
a sea shanty about that, and there's also one about an angry resident trying to evict a mouse. So that's kind of a Christmas song. I'd love to debut it maybe on the pod
Yeah, sure.
around Christmas time.
Absolutely. My kids have gotten very into sea shanties, believe it or not.
It was a big TikTok thing for
TikTok,
a while.
man.
That was like years ago, probably, when TikTok had just started.
I'm going to have to enlist Carl on some of the Basso Profundo parts.
Oh.
We'll see. We'll be in touch.
Be in touch.
I was in the DePaul choir for 4 years. If you, yeah, so if you need any other, I had
We
to
got a 4-piece choir here among the four of
I
us.
sang bass too as well.
I don't
So you need
sing.
double basso.
I don't sing, and Serge doesn't talk. So, Carl, anything you would like to say? Thank you for coming on. It's been a while.
I am so glad that I am still like sort of plugged into Chicago beer, just because like all the way up here things are pretty well set in stone, but like everything that's going on and you know you can't be somewhere for as long as I was around Chicagoland craft beer and not like stick with it. So it's been wonderful to see your guys' faces again, even through my computer screen up here in the middle of nowhere, northern Michigan. And thanks for letting me come and hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Let us know when you come back to Chicago.
Good vibes. Yeah.
I'll probably be back for FOBAB.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Come a day early, maybe?
Maybe a couple.
Oh,
We shall see.
There's a good beer bar I like called the Beer Temple, so maybe we'll see you there.
Somebody reached out. They want to do this would, Cal, this could fit if you want to do it on a.
Goose Island wanted to do a tap takeover.
They want to do
Honkers is tasting
Bowerbin County.
a hot take history on Christmas beers, which there's a long
yeah.
history on Christmas beers.
Oh, yeah.
But it's somebody who's associated with a brewery who makes a very famous Christmas beer, and they wanted to come on, and they're going to be here around FOBAB, so we'll maybe see. We can talk about it after the fact. Yeah. After the show.
Yeah.
So we can be doing that. We're going to do some hot take history next week as well. We got Mike Siegel coming on, Ron Pattinson.
Hot take history
yeah.
of
All-star panel.
general.
You'll find out.
Generally British beer.
Yeah. No, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a hot take history, but we're going to talk
Called
about.
Shut Up About Barclay Parkins.
Yes.
The podcast.
Yeah,
Perkins.
Gonna be a 450 North tasting.
Yeah.
exactly.
Ron's favorite.
What do you think of this?
Put on your glasses.
I wish Michael Jackson was still alive so he could try a 450 North.
He missed out.
He would love it.
Quick
You'd
shout
love
out. Who wore the, was it Brent at
Yeah.
Juwan's Day that wore the Michael Jackson shirt?
Yes,
That's rad.
I only listen to Michael Jackson.
Brent,
And it was a picture of
St.
Michael
Aaron's
Jackson.
in Chicago.
Anything else? Anything else anybody would like to say before we go?
I wanted to mention one thing. I've enjoyed a number of good beers from Pilot Project and their breweries, so I wanted to shout out them. Go drink their stuff. I had a chicory beer from Azadi 2 weeks ago that I liked, and a Funky Town Pale last month that I liked. So while this sounds extraordinary, the expansion thing, there are still like real people in the incubating breweries,
Right.
if that's the right term for it, who are like a part of the gamble. So try it for yourself. See what you think. See if it's crazy. See if it's sensible. The
We've got
brewery has like a million things on, so it's in Logan Square, open 7 days a week.
8 million things now.
8 million big dollars. Yeah, check it out. Shout out to them.
Yeah, we actually have a collaboration with Funky Town it's coming out this week, and so we did our classic Home and Home. It's called It Is What It Was.
That's a good name.
It's going to be
Purple Rice Saison.
Yeah, do you have the Is Was beer? It was what it is. Wait, what?
Yeah.
What is it?
In our true tradition of theirs is also called that, so there's going to be 3 beers called It Is What It Was from 2 different breweries.
Your untapped liaison's going to have a heyday with that one.
Great.
I don't think. What
Do you
is
have a liaison?
Of course not, dude. Of course not. 7 people does not constitute a necessitate a liaison. All 7 of the guys that drink our beer every time, and that one woman.
Aaron Slager,
Chris Quinn.
Chris Quinn.
You've never checked in a beer on Untapped.
I haven't checked in any beer, unironically, in years.
We've been getting a lot of check-ins. We sent a pallet of beer to Europe. Those people are brutal.
Are they ticking?
They're like, this is a great beer. 3.1.
No.
But then you look at them, it's
That's
like,
rape beer.
but it's like everything it's like two
Everything
twos.
gets-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the rape beer
So
style.
it's like the high end of their normal.
Yeah. It's all,
Scores.
they're like, this is a fantastic version of this.
Well, if you end up sending a
Bring
package
the whole thing down. Especially because
Yeah.
like some of our stuff only has like 9 ratings
9
sometimes
reviews.
when it's like not that we send any of that to Europe. Maybe one thing we sent to Europe that only had 9 reviews. Doesn't matter. That's not why I want to talk about it. But
Karl, do you check into beers you try, and do you give a score if you do?
I have checked into
love
a beer on
co-host Hal
Untapped.
tonight.
I'm good
Hal.
like for one every 3 years or so.
do you have like a whole website where you might like talk about and think like how you feel about beers instead of just doing Untapped?
That might be something
That's
to
way
plug.
too much work. That's crazy.
Guys drinks beers, right?
Guys drink beer.
One guy drinks
drank
beers.
beer.
Guy drinks beer.
Guys drinking beer.
That's all seltzer now.
yeah. Guys drink beer. Then you have to put a strike through on the beer to hard seltzer. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hard seltzer.
And you're talking to America's preeminent smooge journalist.
Wow.
Or whatever that apple pie's coming back, man. I'm excited.
Oh
That's
no,
really good.
I'm scared. They make an apple pie smooge.
It's good.
No,
good.
Carl, you're in
good.
their pockets. Come on.
I am not.
You're in big smooge pockets.
I had a 450 North apple cider donut XXL smoothie IPA,
Taking the headphones off.
and it was
He's not kidding. Awesome.
disgusting. Couldn't even got it. Was like, all right. It all went right into the garbage. We couldn't even finish it. Like, it was so bad. Anyway,
The cranberry
Beer sucks,
cocktail comes
smooge.
back for
beer
Thanksgiving.
sucks. Smooge,
Smooge.
smooge for life. See you next week,
Search it,
everyone.
hit the music.
So long.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again, 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 again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again, again,